Here is the English translation. The path ahead was paved with bluestones, with weeds growing in the cracks. Following the undulating weeds, he looked towards the end of the bluestone path where an old, dilapidated main hall stood on a high foundation with 6 steps leading up. Faint yellow light emanated through the lattice gate of the main hall. There are lights? The surroundings were silent and desolate. The bright moonlight did nothing to warm Zhang Yuanqing in this environment. On the contrary, it felt even more terrifying. Swish swish. Walking over the withered yellow weeds, he proceeded cautiously towards the main hall. His footsteps sounded especially clear in the open space. Swish swish. Suddenly, Zhang Yuanqing's ears twitched as he heard an extra set of footsteps behind him. Something was following him. He whipped around abruptly. The night was like water, the weeds lush, but there was nothing behind. Auditory hallucination? Zhang Yuanqing paused in frightened apprehension before stepping forward again. Swish swish swish. The footsteps returned. He heard it clearly this time. Something really was following him. It can't be this sinister, encountering a dirty thing right after entering the temple? Not daring to look back, he quickened his pace. The footsteps behind also sped up accordingly. Zhang Yuanqing could no longer restrain his fear. Goosebumps rose as he broke into a mad dash towards the main hall. The footsteps doggedly tailed him. As the chase went on, Zhang Yuanqing soon burst through the weeds and neared the main hall. With 2 leaps, he was up the 6 steps and finally crashed through the latticed double doors of the main hall with a huge bang. The footsteps behind abruptly vanished. Huff, huff. Gasping heavily, he finally dared to look back. Moonlight spilled like water into the courtyard, tranquilly frightening on the desolate weeds and stone path, yet there was nothing. Luckily, it didn't follow. After catching his breath, Zhang Yuanqing gently closed the main hall doors, as if to keep the fear outside. Next, he surveyed the interior. On the high stone foundation was an enshrined goddess draped in furs and lavish attire. She had a round face with delicate eyebrows and eyes, exuding kindness. In one hand she held a feather duster, the other hand was shaped as if originally grasping something, now empty. On both sides were attendant boys holding swords and girls holding books. Before the foundation was an offering table covered in dust. It held candle stands. A 20 centimeters long, baby-arm-thick candle burned silently. The candlelight dispelled the darkness, seemingly also dispersing Zhang Yuanqing's fear. He felt much calmer emotionally. On the left wall hung 2 faded, cracked wooden tablets engraved with regular script. Zhang Yuanqing walked over and squinted at them in the dim candlelight. The writing style was classical Chinese. With his decent language skills, he guessed and figured out a clear picture of where he was. This mountain was called Mount Sonda. The enshrined mountain goddess was Sonda Nyangnyang. Sonda Nyangnyang was a mystic from Songfu in the early Ming dynasty. She cultivated on Mount Sonda, was adept in talismans and alchemy, could pray for rain and dispel ghosts, protecting the land and bringing good weather. Thus she was revered like a deity by the common folk. After she ascended, the local government built this temple on Mount Sonda called Sonda Nyangnyang Temple, managed by her disciples to maintain the incense as temple keepers. A temple from the early Ming dynasty, so it's about 500 to 600 years old now. Zhang Yuanqing mumbled to himself. Just then, he inadvertently glanced under the offering table and his heart jolted. A dark figure lay in the shadows beneath. Preoccupied by fear earlier, he hadn't noticed it immediately in the dim light. Zhang Yuanqing steeled himself and approached for a closer look. It turned out to be a skeleton. Amidst his shock, Zhang Yuanqing also felt relieved. Compared to this bizarre mountain temple, a skeleton was less frightening. Stepping closer, he could make out the clothes on the skeleton in the weak candlelight, a dusty set of work overalls. A worker? Was this the construction team from back then? So I really entered the world of that legend. But Zhang Yuanqing then thought of an even more horrifying possibility. Perhaps the construction team, like him now, had wandered in by mistake, thus spawning the urban myth. If the former was true, then this so-called spirit realm generated scenes based on the legend. If the latter was true, it meant the old temple had always existed, and the construction team and him currently were both victims. Based on the temple's historical background, Zhang Yuanqing leaned towards the latter. An entire construction team died in this temple, only one survived. This place really can be fatal. Now I'm in this temple too, danger could arise any time. He sucked in a breath, tensing up again as he subconsciously surveyed his surroundings. Then he suddenly noticed an alarming detail he had overlooked. This was a Ming Dynasty temple, ancient history. How could the candles still be burning? Who was replacing candles in the main hall? The more he thought about it, the more chilling it seemed. Even the benevolent, kind-looking statue took on an eerie, sinister air in the candlelight. The three mud sculptures were covered in dust but vividly lifelike, every detail carved true to life, especially the eyes. Standing atop the foundation, looking down at Zhang Yuanqing condescendingly in the dim candlelight,